Bonjour tout le monde, c'est moi Charlotte et aujourd'hui nous allons étudier 6 citations célèbres, ou au moins assez célèbres, sur le thème de la confiance en soi. Ok? On y va? Oui? Ok. Hi everyone, my name's Charlotte and in this month's French Club video we're going to look at 6 famous, or at least quite famous, quotations on the topic of self-confidence. I think this is something that most language students struggle with at some point. It's probably actually something that most people struggle with in some area of their life. And often it can, of course, be quite inhibitive. Now, that's all understandable, but it's such a shame, isn't it? Because a lack of self-confidence can prevent us from seizing opportunities, taking risks, pushing ourselves, progressing, improving. So, it's a key theme in life, as well as in language acquisition or education or indeed employment in general. So it's one that really is important to me. I think in terms of my self-confidence, I love singing. I'm not very confident when I play guitar because I haven't put enough time and effort into it. I just don't have as much time as I'd like to do that. So that's frustrating. I've been the person who has learnt 2 foreign languages from scratch, and I've made lots of mistakes along the way. I still make mistakes. I can't let it bother me, because it doesn't matter. It's a learning curve, and that approach to life really just carries across in all areas of life. If you're able to make mistakes, not take them too seriously, apologize if need be, and just get on with it and think, right, well, I won't do that again. That's such a positive way of looking at things, okay? And I encourage people to think that way in my one-to-one lessons, in my group classes. In any teaching situation, I like to, instead of putting an emphasis on things that people have got wrong, emphasize when people have done something right, and when a learning event has taken place, and celebrate it, and then come back to it and test it, and then celebrate again. So anyway, there's lots of lots of opportunity to build self-confidence, and I think it's nothing to be ashamed of if we make mistakes, okay? You probably hear me make mistakes sometimes in my videos. That's okay. I'm human. That's all right. Okay, so it's the same for you guys. Right, let's have a look then. So the first one, I don't know why I think of this one. I included it because it's from Victor Hugo. So he says, la confiance en soi. Now, I guess I do kind of, to an extent, empathize with this. Right, so let's zoom in so you can actually see it. So the one I've chosen is la confiance en soi. That's how you say self-confidence. La, so it's a feminine noun. Let's see if I can just make it a little bit easier for you to see. La confiance. Now, it's very similar to the English word, but there's no D in it. It is instead CONFIANCE. La confiance. Okay, not confidence, confiance. En soi. That soi bit means oneself. Self-confidence, confidence in oneself. And it can be translated as yourself. Confidence in yourself, if you're talking impersonally, for example. So, he said, Victor Hugo said, la confiance en soi fait le saut. Fait le saut. So what I've done here is I've underlined the verbs that appear in the sentences. whether they are conjugated or in infinitive forms. Here we've got the verb faire, very common, that's in the present tense, it's third person singular, and it's agreeing with self-confidence, la confiance en soi. Fais le saut. Now, this can mean to do or to make. Le sot is the fool or the idiot. Okay, it's kind of pejorative, right? It's to do with like someone with low intelligence. So, la confiance en soi fait le saut. So it's basically saying confidence, self-confidence can make you foolish, can turn you into a fool. But wait, that's completely the opposite of what Charlotte was saying. But look at the last bit. So, after the semicolon, we've got a further explanation. La foi, la, another feminine noun here, foi, F-O-I. Okay, there's a few words that sound basically the same as foie, foie gras, encore une fois, foire, with an R-E at the end, okay, they're all similar sounding, but this means faith, okay. La foi en soi, that's an E-N, so faith in yourself, en soi can be translated as in yourself, or you could hyphenate it and put it in front of, say, self-confidence to make a compound noun. So here, well, it would be a compound noun in English. So, la foi en soi, self-faith, faith in oneself or faith in yourself, fait le grand homme. So, here we've got fait again, make or makes, le grand. Now, why have we got the adjective grand coming before the noun? Because often we're taught that in French the adjective that describes a noun follows the noun. We'll see some examples of that. Generally that is the case, but here we've got a specific meaning. So instead of grand, meaning big or tall, we have the word grande, meaning, or grand, doesn't have an E on the end, so it's not pronounced grande. The meaning is great, okay, and therefore it precedes the noun homme. So here we're talking about confidence, self-confidence can make a fool, or can make one foolish. Self-faith or faith in oneself makes a great man, or makes a man great, makes a person great, if you like. There are lots of ways of translating this, but the meaning is, if you're too cocky, you can come across a little bit silly. But if you have faith in yourself and trust, self-assurance maybe, then that's what makes a great person. Actually, I don't really disagree with that bit. This bit here I think could be misunderstood. It could be taken out of context. Self-confidence is a great thing. As long as you're confident enough to not take things too seriously, okay? If you go around telling people what you think is right, and you don't like it if they disagree, that is pretty foolish in my opinion. Anyway, la foi en soi fait le grand homme. So, faith, la foi, as in faith in, say, God or fate or yourself, that kind of thing. Okay, so that was Victor Hugo. So this is the handout that my language club members will receive today. There's pictures of the people who have made these or have said these things. In some cases, like the next one, that's number one, this is number two. In some cases, like the next one, it isn't a French native speaker who has said what's been quoted. Here we've got a quote, for example, from Charlie Chaplin. Okay, so let's see what he said. In fact, I'll read it out first, and then I'll go over this, just in case it's not easy to see. Un amour fervent du théâtre n'est pas suffisant, un acteur. Il doit s'y ajouter un amour fervent de soi-même et de la confiance en soi. La confiance en soi. So you probably see that in most of these, or an element of that in most of these citations, these quotes. La confiance en soi, remember, is self-confidence. So he said, un amour, a love, an amour, okay, un amour fervent. Ooh, wow, that word exists in English, doesn't it? Fervent, burning, deep, bright, fervent, a fervent love of the theatre, du théâtre. Whenever you see a D and a U, that's a combined or an articulated preposition, and it basically means it would be the word de, the preposition, of, a fervent love of, and then le théâtre, because it's a normal singular masculine noun, le théâtre. When you have de followed by le, it becomes du. Okay, that's what's happening here, there. Un amour fervent du théâtre. Théâtre. Okay, so this makes sense because he was an actor, performer. Il y a des années. Un amour fervent du théâtre. Let's just go a little bit forward there because that looks kind of hard to see. He says, a fervent love of theatre n'est pas suffisant. Now, n'est pas suffisant, that's the negative form of the verb être, to be, in the third person singular. So a fervent love of the theatre is not, n'est pas. There's the verb être, il or elle est, and then we've put ne and pas around it, which is how you negate something in French generally. The verb starts with the conjugated verb est, in the third person here, starts with an E, and so instead of saying ne est pas, it gets contracted down to just an N and an apostrophe, and then it's pronounced n'est pas. Un amour fervent du théâtre n'est pas suffisant. Now this is a useful word. This is an adjective here describing suffisant, describing the fervent love of the theatre, or what it is not actually. It is not sufficient. It's not sufficient. Okay, so that's very similar to the English word. It can also be translated as enough. Okay, but in the sense of sufficient. Okay, because the word assez, j'ai assez d'argent, I have enough money, that has a different meaning. Okay, so if you mean that isn't sufficient for me, I need more of something, it's not enough, you might need the word suffisant. So a fervent love of the theatre is not sufficient à, that means to, preposition à un acteur. Okay, so deep burning love of the theatre is not sufficient for an actor, he says. What's the rest of the sentence? He says, il doit, he has to, or it must be, il doit s'y ajouter, that means add to it. S'ajouter, s'ajouter, ajouter means to add. And when you have this S apostrophe, s'ajouter, it's a reflexive verb. It can be used in the infinitive to mean be added to. Okay, added to it. That's the little Y there. It must, or he must, be added to it. therefore, to the fervent love of the theatre. S'ajouter. We've got two. Il doit is one verb from the verb devoir, to have to or must. And then it's followed by the reflexive infinitive verb s'ajouter. And then we have this little, I think it's a pronoun. Yes, I. Y is pronounced I. And that goes between the reflexive pronoun se, which is contracted down to an S apostrophe, because a Y functions a bit like a vowel. That's probably the most complicated little part of all of these quotes actually today. It must be added to this must be un amour, I don't know why I keep pronouncing amour like a British person. Amour. So added to this must be a fervent love of, so we've got this repetition of amour fervent. Now what do you think he's going to say? A fervent love of the theatre is not sufficient or is not enough to an actor. Added to it, there must be a fervent love of soi-même. A fervent love of oneself. Fervent de, that just means of, soi-même. Right, so we're seeing this soi. Soi, spelled S-O-I, means the self, le soi. And soi-même means oneself. Même. Moi-même, myself. Toi-même, yourself. Lui-même, his self, or himself, his self, depending on the context, I guess. Elle-même, herself. Nous-mêmes, with an S on the end, ourselves. Vous-même, yourself or yourselves. Eux-mêmes, elles-mêmes, themselves. So you'll see that même, after variations of soi, like various pronouns, okay? Moi, toi, elle, lui, nous, vous. Elle with an S at the end, il with an S at the end mean they or their, themselves. So this is in the third person, if you like, the self without saying, masculine self. In fact, in English, the word self is gender neutral, I suppose, isn't it? Until you start addressing someone by name elsewhere in the sentence. So you must also add il doit. He, the actor, must also add to it un amour fervent du théâtre, un amour fervent de soi-même, a fervent love of the self, or oneself, et, and, de, and of, and a fervent love of, excuse-moi, et de la confiance. Oh, okay, so, de la confiance, so this isn't saying and of something else, a fervent love of something else. This is saying and some. De la confiance. De la. De la is a bit like du. So where we had de plus le, it can either mean of the, for something that's masculine, or it can mean some. Tu veux du café? Do you want some coffee? Tu veux du pain? J'ai mangé du pain et j'ai bu du café. I ate some bread and I drank some coffee. So, du, the preposition and the article combined, can either mean of the, like it would in English, of the, put it together, or it can mean some. So here we've got an example of how the preposition de followed by the article la just means some. So, de la confiance confiance. Don't know why that A is so big. Confiance en soi. Right, let's try and zoom in a bit so you can maybe see that a bit better. Le A c'est très grand, je ne sais pas ce que j'ai fait là, mais voilà. C'est un peu comme un D au lieu d'un A. So, a fervent love of the theatre is not sufficient or enough to an actor. It's not enough. An actor needs more than that. He should, or the actor should, add to it a fervent love of oneself, or their self, and some de la confiance en soi, some self-confidence. Fair enough. Well, he should know. He was an actor, very, very famous and successful person, at least, and very famous at least. Okay, numéro 3. Let's have a look at number 3. So number 3 starts with an infinitive verb. So I'll read it to you. Manquer de confiance en soi est l'un des supplices les plus raffinés que peut imposer le créateur. So, if that wasn't completely clear from listening, let's have a look at it. So, manquer de confiance. Manquer is to lack or be missing, okay? Manquer de confiance en soi. That means lacking self-confidence. Or to lack self-confidence. In English we can translate that as to lack or lacking self-confidence, but it is an infinitive verb. It means to lack or to be missing. Manquer de, there's a noun, une manque, a lack, like a lack of something, a lack of iron, a lack of water. Okay, when something's missing, you can use the noun une manque de. So manquer de confiance is when you're lacking confidence, a lack of something. So the preposition de will be seen sometimes with that verb when it means to lack or be missing. Not always. Sometimes you'll see that verb conjugated, okay? But it functions in a way that's a bit different from English. So if you were to say, I miss you in English, in French you'd say, you are missing to me. Tu me manques. Maybe I've done a video on this before. If I haven't, it's just one to be aware of. That verb does not function in the same way as in English, okay? It's a bit confusing. But manquer de, used as an infinitive, followed by a noun, lacking confidence or self-confidence, est l'un des supplices. Okay, supplice. How can we translate supplice? Okay, one of the torments. Torments. Let's find, let me think of how we do supplice. Supplice. Affliction. Aha, there you go. That's a good word. Something difficult that you have to go through. So, it is, so there's the verb être again. So, lacking self-confidence, all of this bit here, the first bit, is used here as the subject of the sentence, which is quite a useful thing you can do with a verb, okay? An infinitive verb. Is one of the afflictions or torments or ordeals or the torture. There's loads of, they're quite negative, loads of words that work here. Maybe an affliction, something that prevents you from doing something. One of the most refined, plus raffiné, that means like sophistiqué, detailed. Lacking self-confidence is one of the most refined, les plus raffinés. So les plus raffinés agrees with and follows the noun des supplices, which means affliction. afflictions or torments. Basically something, a problem that you have to carry with you or go through. Okay? There's another word in English that you have to go through and test, a trial, an ordeal. There's a sense that this is difficult to have to deal with, okay? So those are the various meanings of this. Lacking, or the lack of self-confidence. You can also translate that in English using the noun. The lack of self-confidence is one of the most refined afflictions, okay, if you like, but you can also use lacking as a noun. Take the verb to lack, add ing, okay, and then you can use that. Or you can use the infinitive. To lack confidence is one of the most refined afflictions that can impose le créateur. Que peut imposer le créateur? So this happens often in French. We've got the person or the entity who's imposing these afflictions upon people. That appears at the end of the sentence. So instead of que il peut imposer le créateur, which might sound a bit more like English, we've got a slight change in the grammatical kind of layout. That the creator, God or whoever the creator might be, depending on your religion and faith and belief, that kind of thing. That, que means that, the creator with a capital C, can, peut, from the verb pouvoir, that he can, that means to be able to do something. Imposer. When you have the verb, any of the modal verbs actually, conjugated, devoir, pouvoir, oh my gosh, what's the other one? Pouvoir, devoir. Savoir is like another kind of one. I must, I can. I can't remember the modal verbs. Oh my goodness. Modal verbs, French. It's a bit embarrassing. Let's see if I can find it. Vouloir. Oh my goodness, I would never have got that. So completely forgot vouloir. So to be able to, pouvoir, to have to or to must, devoir, vouloir, to want, that's the other one I couldn't think of. And then also savoir kind of functions like a modal verb, but it isn't one of the main three. That means to know. When these verbs are conjugated, they can be followed by an infinitive. And here we have the infinitive imposer, to impose, okay? To put something upon someone. Impose, okay? Like impose a rule, impose a task, to impose something that affects how you do something else, okay? So, manquer de confiance en soi, lacking confidence in yourself or lacking self-confidence, is one of the most refined or most sophisticated afflictions that the creator can impose. Yeah, it's true. And like I was saying at the beginning, it can affect everyone, lots of people. I mean, if you haven't already figured this out, you know, it seems maybe as a teacher, maybe just as a person, maybe just through my life experiences, most people are suffering with self-confidence issues in at least one area of their life, and they just need encouragement. And yeah, encouragement goes a long way. But we can't rely on other people to grow our self-confidence. We kind of have to test ourselves and build it, you know, and develop ourselves. So it's an ongoing effort, you know. But it can be applied. This is basically saying that lots of people, well, it's something that applies to lots of people. It's a massive hindrance, an affliction, a hindrance, a torment, okay? So if you're suffering with self-confidence issues, just remember that everyone is, okay? And no one cares that much about what you're going through. They're more concerned with themselves. And lots of people don't like to own up, admit to self-confidence issues, and they're really just holding themselves back from developing. So there you go. Right, stop rambling, Charlotte. Number 4, let's see number 4. Oh, the person who said this was, il s'appelle Patrick Poivre d'Arvor. Okay, I'm not sure who that is, but I've got a picture of him here. I just liked his quote. C'est lui là. Là. Okay, so the next one. De Jean-Marie Adiafi. On ne peut vivre sans foi, ni confiance en soi-même. Okay, that's short and to the point. I like it. On ne peut vivre sans foi, ni confiance en soi-même. Now what we have here are 3 kind of negative words in succession, and it's in the third person. It's in the third person, so this is present tense verb. We've got peut followed by vivre. Okay, so we've got here the verb pouvoir, conjugated, present tense, third person singular, followed by an infinitive. It's in the on form, which means it's impersonal. One cannot live without, sans foi, sans, oh, I'll make this a bit darker. So, on is the third person singular. So when it's when it's a subject pronoun, and it's on the same line, if you like, as il and elle, when you got a verb table, okay? So, il, elle, on peut, or ne peut pas, as the case may be, if it's negative. So it's a third person singular, conjugated in the same way as il and elle, singular. On ne peut, now here we've got an interesting thing which happens in certain circumstances. When you're saying one cannot, it is not possible to do something using the third person, using any of the subject pronouns actually. Here it just happens to be on, it's impersonal. When you've got the verb pouvoir, there it is, negative, negated by ne, you might expect to see pas wrapped around that little verb, ne pas, like a ne pas sandwich, because you're taught that that makes it a negative in French. But there's an exception, which happens with a few verbs when they're followed by an infinitive. And pouvoir, followed by an infinitive, vivre, to live, when it's negated with ne, does not require a pas. Just there. Okay, so it's confusing, kind of high level thing, but it's something you might hear and think, where was the pas? You don't need it. Il n'y en a pas besoin. On ne peut vivre. One cannot live, or you can't live, or we can't live. It can be translated in a few ways in English. Sans foi. So another kind of negative word, if you like. Sans means without. Foi. What was that word, foi? Okay, it's not foi as in encore une fois, one more time. Even though that is une fois, la foi, that's also a negative word. It's got an S at the end actually. And it's not foie gras, okay, like duck or goose liver pate type stuff, no. It's the word faith, remember? La foi en soi, faith in yourself, faith in oneself. So, comment il s'appelle? Jean-Marie Adiafi, I think that's how you pronounce it. He said, on ne peut vivre sans foi. You cannot live, one cannot live without faith nor confidence in one's self. Now this little ni, doesn't it just make you think of the knights who said ni? Ni! From Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Anyway, that's a silly English comedy, but it's very, very funny. C'est très marrant en fait. You cannot live without faith, nor, so the ni means nor in English, with neither this, nor that, nor this. You can use it a few times. Ni ça, ni ci, ni ce, blablabla. En soi-même. Now we saw this, didn't we? Soi means self, and même can also mean self, so oneself. Here the soi bit kind of is the oneself. Toi-même would be yourself, moi-même would be myself, so soi-même kind of means oneself. Okay? But remember that le soi can mean the self. The self. So it could be a noun or it could be a pronoun. Okay? Right, so that's un, deux, trois, quatre. Un, deux, trois, quatre. Let's look at the last two. Maybe you recognize this. Who knows? Qui sait? On va voir. Okay, so here we have number 5 on the list. Ils le peuvent parce qu'ils pensent qu'ils le peuvent. Ils le peuvent parce qu'ils pensent qu'ils le peuvent. Now I like this one. This I think is quite true. So this is numéro 5. Ils le peuvent. There's that verb pouvoir again. So I guess if we're talking about self-confidence, kind of by default we'll be talking about ability to do something or belief in yourself. We're talking about potential being fulfilled. So pouvoir, literally, le pouvoir de faire quelque chose is the power. So pouvoir might be the verb that you're seeing here conjugated, to be able, but it's also a noun if you have the word le in front of it. Le pouvoir. That means the power or the ability to do something. So it makes sense that we're seeing that verb appear quite a lot here. Linked to the theme of self-confidence. The power or ability. Okay? Like the potential to get something done. Ils. So that means they. It's the masculine subject pronoun ils. Le peuvent. They can. Now sometimes you have the article le in French where in English you don't. That happens quite often actually. But there's like an unsaid thing here. It basically means it. They can, brackets, do it or achieve it because they think, they believe that they can. They can because they think they can. In English you don't need to sort of complete that with like a noun or another verb, okay? But here we're using le, which often is the case in French, and it kind of refers to something, it, or a verb phrase, okay? There's some other information there which you'd have to put some more words in English generally. Or actually, they can because they think they can. They can what? Like, you know, you can use that in English in the context of lots of different things. Why have they done that? Well, they can because they think they can, you know, they believe in themselves. But in French you need a little bit of extra information, and that comes in the form of the le article, okay, which kind of refers to something else, some additional information that isn't present. So this was a Virgile, philosopher, Roman philosopher, poet, I believe, je crois, from many moons ago, is the person who said that, and that's the French way of writing Virgil. Okay, Virgile. Ils le peuvent, so peuvent, from the verb pouvoir, they can, brackets, do it, because, parce que, followed by the subject pronoun il, because they, becomes parce qu'il. So you lose the final E of parce que. Parce que. Lose that final E of parce que, and then put an apostrophe, and then you go straight into il. Parce que il. So it's followed by a subject pronoun that starts with a vowel. Parce qu'elle, parce qu'il, because he, because she, because they female. Okay. Parce qu'ils pensent, they think. Pense, from the verb penser. You could substitute that with croire, if you like, the verb croire. Il pense. So in the present tense, er verbs like penser. In fact, most verbs. Not always, but most er verbs anyway, in the present tense will end with ent for the il, elle, they plural form. Okay? They think. Ils pensent. You don't pronounce the ent. You don't say ils pensent. Something to get used to there. Elles pensent. Elles mangent. They eat. They're eating. They are thinking. They think. You don't have to pronounce the ent. But with er verbs in the they form, in the present tense, ent just that doesn't get pronounced. It's pronounced the first three, normally with an er verb in the present tense, the first three conjugations, je, tu, il, elle, on, and the il, elle, plural, are pronounced in the same way. Je mange, tu manges, il, elle, on mange, il, elle, mange. Okay, so don't be tempted to pronounce that pensons. Okay, anyway, that might be a bit too much information. Here we also have a different verb. So pouvoir is not an er verb, it's an ir verb, but it's kind of like a completely irregular. So that ends with ent, but we don't pronounce it peuvent, we pronounce it peuvent. Okay, as if the nt were not there. Ils le peuvent, as if it wasn't there, the nt. Parce qu'ils pensent, qu'ils le peuvent. See what I mean? Peuvent. They can because they think they can. Sorry, if I turn away from the mic, maybe you can't hear me. So, they can because they think that. So here again we've got this contraction of que and il coming together to make qu'il. So you lose the final e of que, put an apostrophe, and then follow on with the subject pronoun il, and que, il becomes qu'il. That makes it flow a lot nicer, a lot more nicely. Ils le peuvent parce qu'ils pensent qu'ils le peuvent. Ils le peuvent parce qu'ils pensent qu'ils le peuvent. It's a bit like a tongue twister. Ils le peuvent parce qu'ils pensent qu'ils le peuvent. They can because they think they can. So, if like me, you are very determined, I really believe that you're more likely to succeed in something if you have faith in yourself and trust in yourself. That positive approach to something, anything, is, I believe, going to make you more likely to achieve your goal. Okay? Or at least more likely to try, and if you don't try, then you won't achieve it. So, I think that's quite a powerful one, you know. Ils le peuvent parce qu'ils pensent qu'ils le peuvent. They can do it because they think they can do it. Awesome. I like that one. You can do it because you think you can, okay? There's also a little song from the 1950s, maybe before, children's favourite, with a little train who thought that she could. The engine that could. Voila. I think I can, I think I can. Da, 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 da. Check it out, because if you think you can do something, you probably can. Just give it a go. So the last one here is from Oscar Wilde. So, lovely author. Irish, I believe. British at least. I mean, I should know that really. I'm quite a fan of a lot of Oscar Wilde stuff. Let me just double check because it would be useful to get that right. Yeah, so I'm just looking at Wikipedia. Was he Irish? Yes. Oscar Fingal O'Flaherty Wells Wilde. he was Irish. Yeah, an Irish poet and playwright. There you go. Voilà. Il était irlandais. Alors. Okay, awesome. I'm glad I got that right. Sometimes you just have to check these things. So, what did he say? Qu'est-ce qu'il a dit, lui? What did he say? He said, s'aimer soi-même est le début d'une longue vie heureuse. Oh, I like that one. So, this chap had quite a difficult life. Complex, I'll say. If you don't know his story, go and check him out. There is a lovely film somewhere with a fantastic chap playing the character. Oh my gosh, what's his name? Why can't I remember anything? Baby brain. It must be baby brain. That's what's happening. Oh my goodness, but he's someone I love as well. Stephen Fry. Voila. He's a fantastic mind, British mind. Stephen Fry, comedian, writer, author, that's the same thing, presenter, broadcaster, I'd say. Check him out. He was in a film which I think is just called Wilde. He also bears a striking resemblance to Oscar Wilde and is a gay man. And Oscar Wilde was married, and I think he had a family, but was also living, struggling with his homosexual tendencies. So it's quite an interesting story and background. Go and check it out if you haven't heard of him. He was the chap who said this, and he said it in English, but this has been translated. S'aimer soi-même est le début et le début. Remember, if ever you have an E with an accent, an acute accent that goes from bottom left to top right, that's an E pronounced E. Okay? S'aimer soi-même est le début d'une vie, d'une longue vie heureuse. So, let's see what he said. S'aimer. S'aimer is to love oneself. S'aimer. Heureuse. Actually, it can be two things. So, when you have a verb that's got an S apostrophe or an SE in front of the infinitive, it can either be to love oneself, it could be reflexive, or it can be reciprocal, to love each other. On s'aime could mean, that means we love each other. Je m'aime, I love myself. Je t'aime, I love you. Je vous aime, I love you all. Okay, right, so the verb aimer is to love or to like, and s'aimer, you could see that and be like, oh, is it to love each other or is it to love oneself? But here we've got soi-même written after it, which emphasizes, well, it's to love oneself. Okay, soi-même. Et, so there's, in fact, I haven't underlined the verbs here. Perv, pense, perv. Et from être, again, it's the present tense. This is the infinitive, to love oneself. Clarifies the meaning there. It's reflexive rather than reciprocal between two or more people, because soi-même means oneself. Here what's happening is we've got the verb phrase, to love oneself, used as the subject of the sentence, which is what we saw in, what was it? Manquer de confiance en soi. Lacking confidence in the self. So that verb phrase was used as the subject of the sentence, as if it's a thing or a person. All of that is one of the most refined affections that the creator can impose. So we've got a similar structure here, where you can use a verb as the subject of the sentence, or a verb phrase, right? S'aimer soi-même, that's the subject of the sentence. There's the verb. There's the verb être, conjugated to agree with the singular subject. When you have a verb phrase like that used as the subject of the sentence, this whole subject functions as if it's il, elle, or on. So the verb that follows is the third person singular conjugation of whatever tense, okay? So this is the present tense. It is le début. Début. So you probably know debut. To make your debut is to to do something for the first time. Stage debut, singing debut, whatever. So debut means the start, the beginning. Débuter is to begin something. A débutante is someone who is just starting out. Okay, so it's to do with beginnings, okay, or the start of something. It's the start of une, de, plus une becomes d apostrophe une, d'une, of a. Une because it's the noun vie, la vie. Remember, vie is life. C'est la vie means that's life. That's life. C'est la vie. La vie is always going to be a feminine noun. But if you're saying a life, it's une vie, okay, as opposed to la vie, the life. So here we have two adjectives, longue and heureuse. A long life and a happy life. A long, happy life. So with certain adjectives like longue, they're very common, or courte is the feminine antonym, so court, long, courte, longue. You pronounce the G at the end. G-U-E is the G ending because it has a U and an E at the end to make it a G sound, because it agrees with the feminine noun une vie. That's a common noun, and sometimes we saw the adjective grand, big, or great, depending on where it's placed in the context, placed in front of okay? So self-confidence, faith in oneself makes a great man. In that case, that was the first one. In that case, we saw grand homme, and grand there before meant something different to large or tall because of its placement and because it was used with the noun okay, great man rather than a big tall man. But here what we have is two adjectives, and we also have one that's very common, and common nouns can be placed in front of. Common adjectives like long can be, or bon, bonne, can be placed in front of the noun, okay? But also we have a second one, heureuse, happy. And again, heureux would be the masculine, heureuse with an S-E instead of an X. That's the feminine adjective agreeing with une vie. So Oscar Wilde said, Wilde with an avec E à la fin, s'aimer soi-même, loving oneself, is the beginning of a happy or a long, happy life. Hey, and that's the sentiment I'd like to finish on. So, if you're struggling with anything, maybe it's language studies, maybe it's some other aspect of your life, and it's down to confidence. Just remember that as soon as you can let go of your fears, be ready to make mistakes, be not too apologetic about them, because cut yourself some slack. Life doesn't have to be so serious. As soon as you start applying those those tips, I suppose, to your own life, or to your study, or to your language learning, or to your job, or just to your approach to things, you'll be able to achieve a lot more ultimately, because you'll be opening yourself up to discovery. Okay, so don't be too hard on yourself. Don't waste time worrying about things that you could have done differently. Just learn from them, and it's a positive thing. Learning is a great thing. So yeah, build your own self-confidence. Try and find it, develop it. Do more things that will build your confidence quickly. Do things that scare you. Take little risks here and there. It might be speaking to someone in French. It might be writing an email in French. It might be joining my language club. It might be posting a video online, like I try and do every now and then, playing guitar and singing. You know, it doesn't matter if I make mistakes. It's just the doing it which builds your confidence. You can examine what you've done. If people want to point out the errors you make, well done for them. But you know, unless they're trying to do it in a constructive and positive way, just take no notice, because life is too short. Okay, merci beaucoup. If you're a member of my club, then you'll receive this handout. There's a link there to 15 habits which help build your self-confidence. It's an article in French. There's also a couple of exercises, and you'll get the link to this video. Merci beaucoup et à la prochaine fois. Au revoir. Merci.